Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. It means we're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Got lots to do over the course of the next 2 hours. Got Jordan Kitchens and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Again, hope your work week's off to a good start. We'll talk to Dr. Jeremy Burnham from Ochsner coming up at the bottom of this hour. Well, actually, to close out this hour, we got to talk about LSU's performance in basketball on Saturday, specifically the last 3 minutes of said performance. I've got some baseball predictions we'll make. Jay Johnson met with the media a little bit earlier today, and we were into game week for LSU baseball, which I know makes a lot of people, myself included, very, very happy. Matt Musso and I talked for about 45 minutes about the upcoming team. We'll post that to YouTube probably tomorrow to get ready for the season opener. So we'll do a lot of baseball all week long. I'm fired up to be back in this studio. Last week was a ton of fun. It's a week I'll remember for a very, very long time. Again, we appreciate the folks at Guarantee and, of course, LeBear's Baton Rouge for making last week possible over at Radio Row in New Orleans. We were in the convention center all week long. It felt like a month at times, but it's nice to be back and to be home. I don't even know how Jacob and T-Bob are functioning. They did a week in Mobile and then a week in New Orleans. There's just no routine involved in that. It was a lot of fun, though, a lot of great content. And again, we appreciate our higher ups for making that a possibility. But it's nice to be back in this chair, in this studio, and chatting with you all once again on this Monday. So let's get started the way we get started every single day. That's with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
We got to start with the Super Bowl. I think before we get to the game, as I just mentioned, we were down there all week. I think the city of New Orleans put on a show. I think the entire week surrounding the Super Bowl was phenomenal. I thought the convention center was spectacular. I thought that the city took a lot of steps toward this Super Bowl and cleaning things up and dressing the city up. And everybody that I talked to that had come in from out of town was just blown away. The word that you've heard a ton, Steve Levy talked about it on Friday with us. We also talked to Himbo on Friday from Get Up and Greeny and the folks at ESPN. They were talking about walkability and how awesome it is that they could just kind of get everywhere they needed to go by foot. You got great weather. It was really warm, which could happen. Can be cold this time of year as well. We had 10 inches of snow a month ago. So it's I thought the city put on a show. I thought it looked great. I thought that everything went off without a hitch. You had the president was at this game for the first time. The security presence all over downtown in the CBD and in the French Quarter was obviously noticeable. And everything I thought went great. And you will hear folks complain next year when the game's in Santa Clara, the thing's out in the middle of nowhere. Same thing can be said when they go to Miami and the stadium's kind of not close to anything or anywhere that you would stay. New Orleans is awesome at putting on events like this. And yeah, you can make jokes about the lights going out the last time and all that kind of jazz. But the fact of the matter is that this was a phenomenal week in a great city, and we were thrilled to be just a real small part of it over there on Radio Row. I thought the week was a huge success for the city of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana. Now, you look at the game, and it was a dud, an absolute dud. And I'm not sure I can take a pat on the back to say that was coming. Yes, on Friday, I did pick the Eagles. I thought the Eagles had a better team, and I thought they would win. I did not think it would be 34-0. And when you start to peel away at some of the statistics in this game, it really is wild to look at. If you would have told the Chiefs that Saquon Barkley would have 25 carries for 57 yards, they would be thrilled. If you would tell the Chiefs they would hold the Eagles to 3 of 12 on third down, they would be thrilled. If you told them they were going to stop them on their only fourth down, they would be thrilled. If you told them you were going to get a turnover as the Eagles were going down to score in the red zone, they would be thrilled. All of those things happened, and the Chiefs were still not competitive. And it was, in my opinion, based more so than anything else on one thing. The Chiefs' offensive line could not block. They couldn't block. They could not keep Patrick Mahomes functional. He was completely disrupted the entire game. And then I saw this stat from Bill Barnwell on ESPN.com. They did all that without blitzing on a single Patrick Mahomes drop back. They brought Zach Bond on 2 different occasions, but on those 2 occasions, they dropped a defensive lineman into pass coverage. So there was no pressure look on any drop back from Mahomes, and he was under pressure all night. And that's because the Eagles are awesome on the defensive front, and the Chiefs had a weakness, specifically at tackle, and Philly just absolutely eviscerated it. And Mahomes was out of sync and out of rhythm, and it didn't allow him to make some of those easy throws he usually makes. I mean, he threw 2 to Kelsey that like almost hit him in the shin. And then you got Mahomes doing kind of what he does, and he breaks out and contain. He's out there on the right rolling out, and he throws in Cooper DeJean's right there cutting across. He never saw him, got a pick. That's the play that Mahomes always makes to extend drives and to make big plays. And instead, the Eagles were sitting there right there waiting for it. And it's a ton of credit to Vic Fangio, a ton of credit to Nick Sirianni, who's been kind of a scapegoat for this entire thing when it was just kind of a bad month. And that Chiefs roster is awesome. Howie Roseman did a phenomenal job of putting it together. And when you consider what Philadelphia did to the Commanders in the NFC Championship game and then to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, that's the best team in the league. Like, I liked Baltimore for a lot of the year. Josh Allen and Buffalo had a really good go, and the Chiefs, they continued to win close game after close game after close game. It's just what they do. But the Eagles were the best team in the league, and they did it with elite offensive line play, even with Jason Kelsey's retirement, elite defensive line play. Their corners are awesome. How many times did Mahomes drop back? There was a second for him to pat the ball and to throw it, and there's just nowhere to go because they covered him up. And they covered him up long enough for those pass rushers to get home, and Mahomes just didn't have a chance. There are some statistics on Mahomes from this game that are jarring because it's, in a lot of cases, the worst game he's played as an NFL quarterback by some of these advanced metrics. His passer rating was a 10. 10. That's as bad as he's been in his NFL career. His decision-making wasn't good. His accuracy wasn't good. In the first half, he was 6 for 9 for 33 yards out of clean pockets. That's no production in a half of football. None. And it didn't really get any better until garbage time when the issue was decided. I mean, 34-0 at one point. Who cares if you start to hit on some passes? Absolutely clinical. And whenever we've seen on this big stage a quarterback crumble, it's always due to pressure. We saw Tampa do this to Mahomes. We've seen it happen to Tom Brady with those Giants teams. And that was the case here. You just have to build with that elite defensive line to get after these great quarterbacks. Because if these great quarterbacks have some time, you just have no shot. And Philly, without even bringing pressure, was able to get back there. That's like one of the cliches we always hear with NFL, with football games, whenever you're breaking a game down. Like, well, defense really needs to get there with 4. You don't want to send pressure. You need to get, when you just watched it. Like when we say that cliche, that's what that was it manifested on the biggest stage. So I don't think that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes' legacies take a hit for last night. It was just a missed opportunity. You never know when your last time comes. Maybe he'll play in 3 more of these things because they'll continue this thing going. Maybe he doesn't get back. But you still have 3 Super Bowls in your back pocket. You still got a couple more appearances. And yeah, you got smoked in the game last night. No 2 ways about it. And I think if there was going to be a time where somebody was going to try to overreact and say, well, does that tarnish the Mahomes legacy? No. It lessens his chances of catching Brady. Lessens Andy Reid's chances of catching Chuck Noll, catching Belichick. That was the opportunity that they had presented to themselves last night, but it was gone pretty quick. That was the bummer part of it, that we didn't get a better game. But I think as I sit here and reflect on it and think about what it meant last night, it's just a credit to Philly. The organization has just been awesome. And they have done a great job in the draft, great job in free agency, great job in player acquisition. Getting Zach Bond and Saquon Barkley on this team made a huge difference. And hitting on the picks that they've hit on over the years in the draft, with a lot of homegrown talent, including their quarterback, who a lot of people, including myself, would have never taken an early pick on. It's all worked. Howie Roseman has just done a phenomenal job of putting that team together, and that was all on display last night as Philly just annihilated a good Kansas City team. So that's our Genesis opening drive. Every car that is on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. We got plenty to do here on this Monday. We're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. All your printing, scanning, copying needs, GCOPnet.com. It's Gulf Coast Office Products. When we come back, LSU played 37 good minutes of basketball on Saturday and 3 of the worst they played all season. We got to talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show. Hopefully Hunt remembered to bring his laptop charger. Nah, there's no chance.
That rejoin makes me think of young Jacob Beck, who's not here today, but appreciate Jordan for hitting that button. LSU and Ole Miss back on Saturday. This is a game that you have to break down in 2 parts. One's more important than the other, but it's 2 parts nonetheless. LSU for 37 minutes played about as well as they can play. For the game, you held Ole Miss to 38% field goal shooting. You held them to 26% from the three-point line. They limited their turnovers. They only turned the ball over 10 times in the entire game. You got Cam Carter his shots. He shot the ball well. He was 4 of 7 from 3. Jordan Sears knocked in a couple of 3 balls as well. You held your own on the glass and ended up winning by 1 rebound. You had 40 rebounds to Ole Miss's 39. A lot of the things that plague you didn't plague you in this game. Like Ole Miss didn't crush LSU on second chance points. They had 13. LSU had 15 second chance points. Ole Miss didn't crush LSU with points off turnovers. Ole Miss only had 9 points off of LSU's 10 turnovers. Ole Miss didn't dunk the ball in the entire game. LSU played really well for 37 minutes. And that was coming off the heels of getting run off the floor by Texas a week before, getting beat by 19 by Georgia, 2 games in which your defense did not show up. LSU's defense has kept them in a lot of games while they're turning the ball over like crazy and while they're losing on the glass like crazy. Their defense had been what held them together, and it didn't show up against Texas or Georgia. But it did on Saturday. You played really well, and you had an 11-point lead with under 3 minutes to go. And then they absolutely, positively threw up on themselves. There's just no other way to say it. When you play the final 3 minutes of a basketball game and you attempt 1 field goal in 3 minutes, that's unconscionable. And you could just kind of see it slipping away. It started, in my opinion, with a really, really foolish play by Corey Chest to swat the ball out of the Ole Miss player's hand and get a technical foul that led to 4 points that they went to the free throw line and made all 4 free throws. And then you just handled yourself incredibly poorly in the last 3 minutes, just trying to salt the game away. And Ole Miss looked like a team that was comfortable and confident and pushing towards a win. And LSU looked like a team that was desperate not to lose. And LSU just couldn't get a shot off. They couldn't get a shot off in the last 3 minutes. And Ole Miss kept scoring and scoring and scoring. And finally, they get the tip in at the buzzer to win it. Ole Miss scored the final 13 points of the game after Cam Carter made a layup with 3 minutes and 15 seconds to go. LSU did not score again. And that's where you got the technical foul that got folks to the free throw line. Brakefield makes a layup. Padula draws a foul. Brakefield hits a 3. You knew that ball was going in the second he let go of it. And then you can't get a shot on your end, and Ole Miss comes down and gets the bucket at the tip in. And it was just a collapse of epic proportions. I could tell you that LSU was terrible from the free throw line, and that's a huge contribution to them losing the game. And yeah, they were bad from the free throw line statistically. You were 12 of 25. That's 48% from the line. That is bad. But you had the wrong guys shooting free throws. Corey Chest was 1 of 6, and Robert Miller was 0 of 4. That's 1 of 10 from Chest and Miller, who were the worst 2 free throw shooters on the team. And they just happened to shoot a lot of them. Sears was 5 of 6. Now, Carter missed 1, and Sears and Carter through, I think, 7 SEC games were something like 50 of 51 from the free throw line. So they don't miss very often, and so for them to miss 2 was a little out of character, but they still were 5 of 7 from the line. And Damian Collins went to the line and made 5 of 6. That's the type of free throw shooting we expect from LSU. LSU entered this game the best free throw shooting team in the Southeastern Conference. And then you go up there and go 12 of 25, but that's not because LSU was some sort of wildly unpredictable situation. No, it was just 2 guys that miss a lot of free throws, shot most of LSU's free throws. They shot 10. But every other statistic you could look at, LSU did a good job. I mentioned at the top, like, they didn't turn the ball over. They didn't give up a ton of second chance points. They did shoot the ball pretty well. Like, they played well until they just absolutely vomited in the last 3 minutes. And there's blame of that goes to the coaching staff. There's blame of that goes to the players. And there's some credit that goes to Ole Miss. And it's a blend of all of that. But it was just unthinkable that LSU could gag it away after playing so well for 37 minutes of action. And so now you've got yourself in a situation where your last 3 games are a 31-point blowout at the hands of Texas, who's 4-7 in the league, a 19-point blowout at Georgia, who's 4-7 in the league, and then a choke at home against Ole Miss. And, like, I don't get any pleasure out of telling you that, but, like, that's the reality that this LSU basketball team is in right now. And I did last week on the show say, man, you got to kind of look at the hustle statistics and scratch your head a little bit, because they're getting smoked on the glass. They're settling for a lot of threes. They're turning the ball over a ton. There are a lot of things that are effort stats that are looking really bad at this point. And all those flipped on Saturday at home against a top 25 team. All those flipped. And then you showed you just didn't have what it took to close the game, which was just brutal to sit there and watch. And it takes all 5 guys on the floor to do what they did over that last 3 minutes. Like, all you need is one person to step up, take the ball, take control, and make a play. And LSU couldn't find one guy to step up and do that. I tweeted it out, and I got a lot of run. But, like, the fact that I went to the shooting, like, you would think if you lost a 13-point lead late in the game that you would miss a bunch of shots. And I looked up and was like, LSU made 2 of their last 3 shots. LSU made 3 of its last 4 shots. LSU made 4 of its final 6 shots. They couldn't get a shot. The only shot they got up in the last 3 minutes and 14 seconds was a Cam Carter layup that got blocked at the rim. And so you look at the play-by-play and how they got there, and it's just a bunch of offensive ineptitude that led to that situation. You got that shot blocked at the rim. You get to the line and miss 2 free throws. You get the ball and you charge. Cam Carter gets called for a push-off. These are the possessions that you got. And Carter's the guy who you want to have the basketball. He's your best player. But he gets caught pushing, and the ball goes the other direction. He knows better than that. It's a 5th-year guy. But they couldn't get the ball where they needed it to get. And Ole Miss made every play they had to make. I think the biggest play is not even the tip-in at the end. The biggest play was Jamin Brakefield hitting that 3 with 45 seconds to go to tie it, and that came off of an offensive rebound. And again, LSU was great on the defensive glass the majority of the game. But in the one instance, you've got to make the play. You've got to get a block out and get the basketball. So they've got to come foul you up 3. You can't get a rebound. Ball gets to break field. He splashes it. It's really, really tough when you get into one of these ruts because these guys still have to get up early and go to workout, get up early, go to class, study hall, practice, treatment, day after day after day. And when you just don't have a win to lean on, it just gets old. And you're starting to hear answers in the press conferences that reflect that. And I get it. Trust me. That's what I would sound like too. It's really, really frustrating to put all that work in and to get nothing in return for it. And you were on the cusp of a really nice win over a top 25 team on your home floor where you controlled the action really throughout the game. LSU took a lead in the first half and really held a lead the vast majority of the game. I didn't check to look at what the lead time was. LSU led for 30 minutes and 12 seconds of this game. 30 minutes and 12 seconds. Ole Miss led for 4 minutes and 44 seconds, and you lost the game. Like, that is really, really difficult to respond to. And that's the task that Matt McMahon and this team are going to have, because it just doesn't get any easier. Like, the teams that you play this week don't have great records, but you're going on the road. You're going on the road to Oklahoma. You're going on the road to Arkansas. And this is supposed to be the softest portion of LSU's schedule. I mean, I wrote for LouisianaSports.net, like, if they're going to make this season interesting, it's got to start right now. And that was leading up to the Texas game. And you got beat by 31 in that game and 19 in the next game against Georgia. And then you blew a 13-point lead with 3 minutes to go in this game. Like, this is the soft part of the schedule. It's just going to get tougher moving forward. And that is not a very comforting feeling when you consider what LSU's record stands at right now and where things are headed. If you want to have a bigger picture conversation about where the basketball program is right now, you can head over to LouisianaSports.net on the homepage. There's a story right there about it. But that was a gut-wrencher for LSU on Saturday. There's no two ways to describe it. And it's going to be really difficult to recover from that. We'll talk to Glenn West about it tomorrow and kind of see what his thoughts are. He was in the PMAC on Saturday night. But, man, it just feels like this thing's on the brink, and it feels difficult to turn it around. That's the conversation we had last week. Like, it's going to be difficult to turn this around. And they may have made a step toward that on Saturday, and then they ended up giving it all back, which is really, really difficult to watch. All right, our Monday show is brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. We've still got plenty to do here in this first hour of a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. I want to talk a little bit about Kellen Moore and what that may mean for the New Orleans Saints. We got a little bit of confirmation that he's headed to New Orleans. I'll tell you where that came from earlier today. And then Dr. Jeremy Burnham from Ochsner is going to be with us at 1:45. Looking forward to that conversation. We'll have that every 2 Mondays. So looking forward to chatting with Dr. Burnham in 15 minutes. Don't go anywhere. It's a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is that website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. The thing that they do the most is that tub to shower conversion. I got to keep the tub in my house because you got a 3-year-old who takes a bath every single night. If there's no 3-year-old in your house and you're not taking any baths, but you've got one of those big 90s style jacuzzi bathtubs that's taking up a ton of space and you never get in it, maybe your bathtub's just old and dingy and just doesn't look very good and you don't use it. Well, if that's the case, get rid of it. Take it out, put in a gorgeous glass walk-in shower, changes the look of your bathroom, changes the functionality of your bathroom, adds a little value to your home. And David Duvall and his team do this kind of work all the time. You can see pictures of that fantastic work at OneBathAndClosets.com. There are also testimonials from their satisfied customers. There's a chance to go right there and schedule that free consultation. It doesn't cost you anything to have a conversation with David Duvall and his team about what they could do for you. It's One Bath and Closets. You can find them online, OneBathAndClosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
We'll chat with Jeremy Burnham from Ochsner coming up in the next segment. Do that every other Monday, talk some injuries as well as their brand new facility over there at Ochsner. So excited for that conversation coming up 15 minutes from right now. We do have some information suggesting that Kellen Moore is, in fact, headed to New Orleans. Asked earlier today if Jeffrey Lurie believed that Kellen Moore was going to leave Philadelphia. Lurie, who's the owner of the Eagles, said, unfortunately, we're going to have to wish him the very best in New Orleans. So that's not an official news source breaking the information, but it is the owner of the team who signs the paychecks, giving confirmation that he's not going to be signing Kellen Moore's paycheck anymore. So we understand that this has been very much in the works for over a week now, and it's just a matter of semantics when it gets finalized. Kellen Moore flew back to Philadelphia with the Eagles after the game, and I'm assuming we'll probably be headed back to New Orleans within the next 48 hours. That's my guess. Got to get the contract all drafted and signed up. But the assumption is that by Wednesday evening, you should probably have official word that Kellen Moore is the new head coach of the New Orleans Saints. I was listening to T-Bob earlier today, and he was just suggesting, look, no matter which way you want to slice it, it's a good thing that the guy who just won a Super Bowl is headed down to New Orleans. And I think that Kellen Moore has done a really good job. We've had a lot of time to dissect Kellen Moore's resume and to talk about whether or not he works or fits. And we've done that a lot over the last week and a half. My thoughts have not really changed. I think this is a pretty good hire with the understanding that nothing's a sure thing and you're hiring a guy who's never done this before. But the only thing we have to go off of is his resume and the production that he has orchestrated. And offensively, you would be hard-pressed to suggest that Kellen Moore hasn't done a good job at his stops. Yes, things kind of got sideways at the end in Dallas. Yes, they had a bad record in San Diego or Los Angeles, I guess it is. I'll never just stop referring to the Chargers as San Diego. It's just burned in my brain too deeply. But look, they didn't win a lot of games when he was there. But then you go to Philly, and obviously they put together a great offense that won a Super Bowl, and with a little bit of help from their defense, scored 40 points against a really good Chiefs defense last night. But I think that Kellen Moore is a good candidate who's got a really difficult job ahead of him. And I think it's a positive that he was able to go out on that note as the Eagles offensive coordinator. The game got so sideways so quickly because the Kansas City Chiefs could not do anything offensively. They continued to go 3 and out and then turn the ball over, and the score got lopsided, and it was 24-0 at halftime. And it obviously, when you're up 24-0 in a Super Bowl at halftime, it's going to alter what you're trying to do offensively. You're going to be a little bit more conservative. And I thought you saw that from the Eagles. They never really got the running game going. We've talked about this a lot, that Saquon Barkley had just 57 yards on 25 carries. His long of the game was 10. But they got Jalen Hurts going in the ground game a little bit. And that, I thought, was a really nice wrinkle from Kellen Moore. You saw a number of designed runs that Jalen Hurts was asked to run. He carried 11 times for 72 yards, had the rushing touchdown as well on the tush push. But look, his long of the day was 17. It wasn't like he got going like crazy, and he was able to consistently pick up yards when they needed it. They got a lot of different wide receivers involved. Devontae Smith had 4 catches. A.J. Brown had 3 catches. Both of them scored touchdowns. I thought the shot plays that they decided to go for were perfectly timed. I thought that the pass down the right sideline to put them in position for that first touchdown was a gorgeous throw on a 3rd down. I thought the big-time shot play that they hit over the top to Devontae Smith was a great play call, and those worked awesome. Saquon Barkley was actually the leading receiver in terms of catches for the Eagles. He had 6 catches in a game where they couldn't find anything for him on the ground. They found another way to get him the ball, which is through the air. Got the tight end involved a little bit. He had a 20-yard catch. So I thought that Kellen Moore did a really good job against a great Saints defense, great Chiefs defense that has elite players on every level. And the Eagles just picked him apart, I thought. And I say picked him apart. It doesn't look like it from the stat sheet, like you threw for 210 and ran for 135. That's not earth-shattering. 335 yards is not something crazy, especially when you consider that the Eagles did win time of possession significantly. What was the time of possession edge? I got to look at that again. I'm pulling it up here. They won time of possession 37 minutes to 23 minutes. And so with that edge, the yardage wasn't eye-popping, but at the same time, the efficiency with which the offense ran and they accomplished what they needed to accomplish. They scored when they needed to. They held the ball when they needed to. They were able to run the ball. They were able to throw the ball. They had to do it a little bit different way than they usually do, which is just hand it off to Saquon and let him rip off 65-yarders. But I thought that Kellen Moore showed a bit of a change up there, showed a second pitch, and I thought that was very, very good. So I'm not here to tell you that I think Kellen Moore is the savior of the franchise and he's going to turn things around immediately. In fact, I think quite the opposite. I think the Saints are at least one more really bad season away from coming out on the other end. And that's not Kellen Moore's fault. He didn't do any of this. But you look at it and you look at it now, and I think that he did a great job in Philly when given the proper materials, so to say. You've just got to do that now in New Orleans. That's the most important thing. Every time I want to talk about the Saints' new head coach, I feel like what has to be part of that conversation is getting the roster to a certain spot. And Philly figured that out and did a phenomenal job of it in every way, with the drafting, with free agent signings, with the trades. Everything that they did kind of turned to gold. Everything the Saints have done has been a disaster. They've got to get back on that track. And then I think there's proof there. There's proof of concept that Kellen Moore knows what he's doing when he's given a full deck like he had with the Eagles. And I thought last night he did a really nice job. Jordan, I don't know if I've talked to you about the Kellen Moore hire. I don't know if you feel any differently having watched the Eagles the last couple of weeks, knowing that was going to be your new head coach. But your thoughts on what Kellen Moore did in Philly and your thoughts on what he could be in New Orleans.
Well, the only problem I have with Kellen Moore is that he's kind of what's left. So it wasn't like he was our first choice.
Nope.
So that is a little, I can say it's concerning because at the same time, at least he wants a job. So I think that if he can get Derek Carr out of here, like I've been hearing the rumblings that's what he wants. Maybe that might have been in his contract. Like I'll sign his contract. Derek Carr has to go. So if he can come in here and do that, I'm standoffish a little bit because, again, he's not who we wanted at all. And it's just what's left. But I have to buy in because he wants the job. So that's all I can say is, like, you have to give him credit because at least he wants to take on a challenge that nobody else wanted to do.
Right.
But you also got to look, we're at the bottom. We're on the clearance rack at this point, and just so happens he's like, hey, I'll do it. So I think he's a good offensive mind. The Cowboys was nice. The Eagles were, a lot of people like to say, well, the Eagles had a super talented team, but the Eagles still, offense was better this year. I feel like
show me a coach who takes a bunch of scrubs and dominates. Like
exactly.
That's the whole part of this discussion is like the Saints, it doesn't matter who they hire. You better get some better players.
Yes.
And then see what that guy can do. And that's why you got to give him a little bit of runway here.
Yeah, well, you need to keep your players because the Eagles out here running around. Yeah, that's the main part. Keep your players.
Yeah, I was looking up at the NFL honors thing on Thursday, and there's Trey Hendrickson accepting an award, and there's Zach Bond in the Super Bowl making a pick, and like
a bench warmer, by the way. Let's keep that in mind. This guy was on the bench last year, and he's a first-team All-Pro, Super Bowl, almost Defensive Player of the Year, and Super Bowl winner.
Let's talk briefly about two ancillary things with the Super Bowl. One, Jameis Winston.
Amazing.
I have been so critical of him, like as a leader of a football team. Like I cannot take you seriously doing the crazy stuff you're doing.
Yeah.
He was on fire all week. He was hilarious with everything he was doing. He was at Lafitte's drinking the purple drink. He was riding pedaling the bike, running into carriages.
Down there by the yachts?
Down by the yachts doing that. He was dancing on Bourbon Street and giving people high fives. That was hilarious. I can't take him seriously at a press conference or in a huddle, but he was perfect on all that stuff this weekend.
And honestly, I think he made himself a lot of money. Not in the NFL today. I mean, well, last week, but when it's all said and done. Oh yeah, James got a nice fat check coming in.
It just worked. It was so goofy and quirky, but it always seemed to work.
It didn't feel fake. That was the main thing. Like that's really him.
Yeah, and he's goofy and quirky, and doing the eat the W thing, but then he takes that and he does it with the beignets. I thought that worked too.
Yeah,
that was awesome. And then we got to talk about the halftime show.
Okay,
because I just didn't get it. Like I want there to be like a show and dancing and like pyrotechnics and all that stuff, and I felt like Kendrick was just kind of walking around singing his songs. Like I just didn't get it.
Well, off air, we was talking about it. I was more, it wasn't the performance, it was boring because I just wanted Lil Wayne. Like, I just felt like if you're going to have a New Orleans thing with all these Louisiana people doing a national anthem and all this, but we can't get a Louisiana guy for the halftime show, that's what you lost me off rip. So I was going to hate on it regardless.
Cassie, I know I don't think that you vibed with it either. What did you think? I know that's probably something you were looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, I especially like as a dancer, I was even watching like the dancers in the background, and I just like wasn't as impressed. I wanted more like production, kind of like you said. It was kind of like underwhelming, and he was just walking around not.
When I think about like
much.
Shakira and Beyonce, and I think about Bruno Mars, like that's some of the Usher last year. Like that's what I'm looking for, and I just felt like they try to do some tricks with the camera with Samuel L. like popping in, and I know that there was a Drake angle to the whole thing that everybody seemed to get to. That's over my head, obviously, but like I just didn't. Nothing popped. I just didn't get that vibe at all. It just didn't work.
When you think of Super Bowl performances, halftime specifically, you do got to go iconic. I ain't gonna say Janet Jackson iconic, but you got to go a little something. You got to push the envelope. Yeah. He's just not in my. He's a great artist. I don't know that he's a great performer. No,
and that's
okay.
And that's what I'm looking for. He's got great songs. That's just not the halftime show that I was looking for there. So there's more thoughts on the Super Bowl and on Kellen Moore. Let's step aside, and when we come back, we'll have Dr. Jeremy Burnham from Ochsner. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. Listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Shout out to the folks at Gulf Coast Office Products. All your printing, scanning, copying needs. Gulf Coast Office Products. GCOPnet.com is where you can find them online. Every other Monday, it's our pleasure to talk to Dr. Jeremy Burnham. He's the medical director of sports medicine and head of orthopedic surgery over at Ochsner. It's our sports health segment presented by Ochsner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Dr. Burnham, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Hunt. Good to talk to you.
It's always our pleasure. I did want to ask. I got a question yesterday about injury, and I said, "Well, I actually have a segment coming up, and I can chat about that before we get to y'all's elite facility that opened a couple of weeks ago." Obviously, basketball season's been tough on LSU this year, and one of the reasons for that is that Jalen Reed has been out since early on in the season in the Florida State game. Somebody asked me if he could play next year, and I said, "Well, I don't really know the answer to that," but he went down in early December. He's a big guy. It's obviously a knee injury. Do you have any thoughts on what his recovery time might look like?
So, what I've seen about his injury online, and look, hats off to LSU Sports Medicine. They have really just an exceptional sports medicine team, and they're on the cutting edge of all this. But what I've seen that's publicly available is that it looked like maybe he tore his ACL, and that's always a tough injury. When you look at how long it takes people to come back, I think it takes a lot longer than we want, but it's in general sometime between 6 to 12 months. And so depending, what types of injuries and everything that goes into it, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that he could be back at some point next year, and I'm sure he's well on his way to that.
They were really, really excited about him. I know he's a heck of a talent and the guy they were going to count on, and it's hurt them badly that he's missed as much time as he had. On a brighter note, you all opened that elite training complex over there on Burbank just a few short weeks ago. I'd love to hear some more about it, the grand opening as it was, and what y'all's plan is for that facility.
Yeah, we're really excited about this facility. It's the Ochsner Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute, and it's at the elite training facility. And, the best way I can think to describe it whenever people ask me about it, because it is a pretty special place and sometimes tough to explain, is, it's really like having a training room situation, like an NFL training room situation, but accessible to all of our patients. And, there's certainly a lot of elite athletes that are out here on a regular basis between, utilizing our sports medicine facility and also the elite training academy, which is on the same campus. But what we really wanted to do is kind of take that model where, if you're in the NFL or you're in some other professional sport or Division I collegiate sports and you're injured, you kind of have access to all of the experts at one time. So you don't really have to make, okay, I'm going to make an appointment with this person, but what if I need to go see this person? We're trying to break down those silos, right? And so you have athletic trainers, physical therapists, you have strength and conditioning coaches, you have orthopedic surgeons, you have non-operative physicians, all under one roof at the elite facility, and really working together to figure out, ideally trying to prevent injury. So we have a lot going on from an injury prevention standpoint. If somebody is injured, we're trying to figure out how can we get them back to whatever activity they want to be back to as quick and as safely as possible. And so that's the spirit behind this facility. It's really a unique place and something that we're real proud of.
I see people hear about this and they're not real sure like if they are qualified. Do you have to be an athlete, or is this just for high school athletes, or is this just for folks over at LSU? I mean, this is for all of your patients, correct?
Yeah, this is for anybody that wants to be active. That can be, a weekend warrior. That can be a professional athlete. That can be, a middle school athlete, a high school athlete, or somebody that, hey, just trying to get more active, doing a couch to 5K program, something like that. And, our vision for it was really to be able to take those resources that are available at the higher levels and bring those to everybody. And we've had some unique capabilities to be able to do that. One of the things we have here is we have a 3D motion analysis lab. And so this biomechanics lab is really something, I actually saw them doing this in Europe. There's a place called Isokinetic, which treats all of the ACL injuries for all the big soccer players in Europe. And, I saw this during my training and I thought, gosh, I love Louisiana, knew I was coming back to Louisiana. I thought, man, if we could ever do something like that in our home community, that would be amazing. And, this motion analysis lab, it allows us not just to, analyze people that have had ACL injuries, but it also allows us to analyze people that may be at risk for an ACL injury. And we could pick out the people that are higher risk, and we could do some interventions, some different types of strength training programs to prevent those injuries. So that's one of our big focuses at this facility as well.
If you want to learn more about sports injury prevention and treatment, you can visit ochsner.org/BRortho. We've got about 2 minutes left, Dr. Burnham, but I did want to talk about that preventative. What kind of things could you do that are considered preventative? What kind of measures can y'all take?
Amazingly, muscle strength and like neuromuscular control of your hip muscles and your core muscles and your quad muscles are just really, really important. And whenever we analyze people, we find that people across all walks of life, they have some asymmetries or they have some weaknesses or some dysfunction. And there's been a lot of sports science that has shown if you can address those areas of dysfunction, that you can significantly cut back on people's injuries. We actually just recently published some research. I'll be presenting it in Washington, D.C. in a few months, and then in Germany at an international sports conference. But we actually did some screening tests, and we found that we could identify people that had a 4 times higher risk of ACL injury compared to their peers. And so now we're going to, the high school athletes that we work with, the different groups of athletes that we work with, and we're trying to do this screening because we like to catch people before they have something like an ACL injury and be able to do some of these strength training, neuromuscular training programs. Sometimes it's as short as a 6-week program. Can really make a difference in somebody's life. And so that's what we're trying to do is really get out there in the community and have a positive impact.
He's Dr. Jeremy Burnham with Ochsner. We'll chat with him every other Monday moving forward. Appreciate the time.
Hey, great talking to you, Hunt. Thank you.
It is, of course, our pleasure. Look, one of the things that obviously is an issue for a lot of folks is cramping. And at Ochsner Andrews Sports Medicine Institute, we know that sports injuries can be unpredictable. One situation you can protect yourself from is muscle cramping. One of the first things you can do to aid in recovery and avoid muscle cramping is to stretch prior and at the end of every activity that you do. Also, not drinking enough fluids can lead to muscle cramps. So be sure to stay hydrated. If you want to learn more about sports injury prevention and treatment, visit ochsner.org/BRortho. It's Dr. Jeremy Burnham there with Ochsner. We appreciate his time. Again, we'll chat about a lot of different things in the world of sports as far as injuries go, some with local flavor, some that may be more nationally relevant. So looking forward to those discussions every other Monday moving forward. If you missed any of the first hour, you can catch it on demand, 1045ESPN.com's on demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound, you can always find us. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. We certainly do appreciate it. Open the show talking about the Super Bowl, and then talked a little LSU basketball against Ole Miss from Saturday back at 1:15, and then a little Kellen Moore talk as well. Find that wherever you find your sound. We'll step aside for Sports Center. It's baseball season, y'all. I got some bold predictions up at LouisianaSports.net. We'll do that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is the website. You can do the entire process remotely and online. Go to genesisofbatonrouge.com. You can see every car that is on the lot there on Airline Highway at PQ. Every car is online right there. You can look through. If there's one that you like, you might want to get behind the wheel of it. You don't have to go to the dealership to do that. You can, but you don't have to. They'll come to you. One of their brand ambassadors will drive that car to your place of work. They will drive that car to your home and let you get behind the wheel. And if you decide, hey, this is the one for me, well, beautiful. They can do delivery, e-contracts, and you never have to set foot on the lot of the dealership. I know that drives some people nuts. It's all about convenience, and it's all about luxury over there at Genesis of Baton Rouge. So go to the website, genesisofbatonrouge.com, and start to look around. Every single new purchase, 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty over at Genesis of Baton Rouge. They're at Airline and Pico across from Women's Hospital. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge.